Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second annual NSC MIRTP plenary, followed by the AGM. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the Treaties of Peace and Friendship, which Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, and Passamaquoddy's peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1726. These treaties recognized the Mi'kmaq and Maliseet title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. I'm Chrissy Gamache, NSC MIRTP Chair, and again, welcome to the plenary session. Let's get right into it. So we have this morning Dr. Susan Glover Takahashi, or Sue GT as she's used to being called. She has both a master's and a doctorate degree in education with a focus on curriculum planning and performance assessment. For almost 10 years, she was the executive director at the Canadian Alliance of Physiotherapy Regulators, leading the implementation of the National Examination Program and inclusion of best practices in exam delivery, continuing competence and credentialing internationally educated candidates. For almost 20 years, Sue has been at the University of Toronto in a variety of administrative and leadership roles, sharing her enthusiasm and expertise. Her areas of research and practice include studying performance and competence, designing programs and implementing systems to support competence in professionals, as well as competency-based assessments. She also works as a consultant for organizations responsible for the regulation and/or education of professionals, which sort of brings her here today. Continuing professional development is new for most of our college members, and I'm sure Susan's session, titled Staying Competent, Challenges and Opportunities, will be very informative for us all. Please welcome Dr. Susan Glover Takahashi.
Thanks so much, Chrissy. Let's go to the next slide. So, you know, I'm here, but there are many people who have informed my work and my practice along the way. So I'm here speaking, but you know, this is the sort of work you do individually. Thanks, Chrissy, for the land acknowledgement. I myself am currently in Prince Edward Island, also a unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq Nations. I work at the University of Toronto, as Chrissy noted. I also have done and learned lots of practical information from the different health professional groups that I've worked with along the way. The work that I do is very collaborative, and I want to thank my co-researchers at the University of Toronto, in particular, Dr. Marla Nair and Lisa Sainama. Let's go to the next slide. So we're going to have interactivity, and you know, if you're tracking those that have logged in, we're at 101 at this point. And so we will be asking you to pose your questions as you go, and we are having the question area monitored. So just type them in, and happy to take your questions as you send them. If I'm going to be dealing with something a few minutes down the road in my you know, in our conversation, then I'll say that, but don't hold on to your questions. We will also have some time for questions at the end. We're also going to be doing some polls, and so you can do that if you're listening on a phone or on a desktop or tablet, but we'll be checking, sort of taking stock of different things along the way. If we go to the next slide. So this is where we're going to travel over the next, you know, 45 minutes or so. We're going to look at competence and what I know about competence, what I've learned along the way. My own research is very much in the risks and supports to competence. That is, how people get into trouble along the way, or what sorts of things seem to protect them along the way. We're also going to talk about some of the different points of view on competence. As Chrissy noted, this is the second annual meeting. You're as organized currently. This is quite a new college, and there's always lots of points of view that people bring to this conversation. And then we're also going to talk about ways of monitoring competence. In particular, we're going to have a conversation about continuing professional development, which is one of the very solid ways for monitoring competence. So that's really our agenda, our roadmap for the next. So we're going to start with some interactivity, and I'm going to hand it over here, I think, to Joanne, who's going to lead us through these polls. Is that true, Joanne?
Yep, I'm going to launch the first poll now. Hopefully you can see that on your screens. So I'll give you a minute or two to answer.
Right, so pick your answer and then we'll be showing the results. The reveal will happen after we do 4 short questions.
Okay, I'm going to do a countdown and close after 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So I'll now launch the second question.
Feels like a test, right?
This one's going a lot quicker. I can see how many. So I'm going to close it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm now going to post the next question. Okay.
Halfway. It's when you get to pick all that apply.
I'll give you a bit longer for this one because I think this one needs a bit more thought.
Alrighty.
About halfway there.
Well, it won't apply to everyone because it's between 3 and 20.
All right, okay. Okay, so I'm going to close it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and then the final question I'm going to launch now.
For those that are 20 plus years.
Oh, whilst John, I've just had a question. The first 2 choices are identical.
But My practice and skills have not changed much, or
This
they've
is the
changed a
last
lot.
question.
Well, the 3 was for those of you that worked between 3 and 20 years, and this is for people who have worked 20 years or more. So yeah, we'll just finish this up and then look at the results soon.
Okay, still going up.
Cool.
Right, okay, I'm going to close it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. I've just got another question. Yeah, the 3 and 20 years one, the first 2 are identical, so you've just covered that, haven't you? So that's okay. So you want me, I'll share
The results, please.
the results of the first question.
All righty. So radiologic technology are of the people that are here, it's 57. Nuclear is 10. MRI is 11. Sonography is 19. Okay. All righty. Let's go to the next answer. Radiation therapy 3.
Yeah, they're, except for radiation therapy, they're pretty close to our membership registrant number
Nice.
percentage. The
Good.
radiation therapy is low, but the rest are fairly close.
Right. So most everyone on the call are experienced. So, you know, just less than one handful of people who are brand new grads. But about a quarter of you are in the 3 to 10, about a quarter of you are in the 10 to 20, and 50% is over 20. Sure, great. And the next answer? So this is for,
Sorry, there's just a couple of queries on this. Oh, have I done the wrong one? Hold on a minute. Let me just.
Can we go through the poll answers, Joanne, and then deal with the questions?
Well, it's relating to the actual whole question. So,
Right, understood. But let's just, we can't change the how they're going to answer. So this is a really interesting and pleasant surprise. So, you know, again, you got to pick all that apply. This is for the people who are between 3 and 20 years. There's a, you know, some think it's easy to stay up to date. Others think it takes effort. And some think are of the view that things haven't changed that much. Alrighty. And the next answer, please, Joanne. Alrighty. Alrighty. So this is for those over 20, and those that have worked for 20 plus years have seen a lot of change and are maybe a little less inclined to say that it's easy to stay up to date, and a little bit more that it takes effort to stay up to date. Alrighty, so let's go to the next slide, and Joanne, we can answer the questions that are sitting with you.
it's just that I think there was a query about the question and the answers, because the results are going to be wrong for question 3. The first 2 options were practice has not changed.
Right, understood. You know, we're not going to, you know, use this to drive everything. We're just trying to take stock. So thank you for, and I think that was. It's about just getting a sense. If we could go to the next slide, Joanne, that'd be super.
Well, I think Julie's got control of the slides.
Thank you. Thank you, Joanne.
Thank
We'll
you.
be back to you for a few more poll questions. So we talked about, and I'm going to, you know, use a little bit of what I saw and heard in those poll questions as we work our way through this. So the reason I have this kind of blurry picture is I like it because what we know is that those of us that work in the field of supporting people to have competent practice have to figure out who needs help, because people don't come with labels saying, hello, my name is Trouble. You know, whether that's a child or a health professional registrant, you know, we're complicated. And so we need to sort of a way of thinking through how people get into to trouble and how people stay competent. And so we're going to spend a bit of time looking at competence and defining some of these words. And so if we could go to the next slide. So a few things about this notion of competence. There's 4 assumptions we're going to make about it. One of them is that it reflects an outcome of training to a specific standard. And in this college, we have multiple health professional groups, and each of you have different education so that you can do different things. All right, and it is not like a college such as you know, dental hygiene, where everyone has the same profession. Here we have multiple health professionals, and each of you have specific different training for your own specific performance. Next slide. So to actually demonstrate competence, you know, we have to, it's a habit, and we have to use all of our skills, communication, knowledge, technical, reasoning, all of these things to benefit the individuals and communities. All right, and some of you are, you know, in smaller health facilities, other in larger, dealing with different kinds of patients and different kinds of problems. And next slide, thank you. I like to think of competence as a 3-legged stool, and why I like this metaphor is because 3-legged stools need, all the legs are important for balance. All right, and when we're performing competently, when we're showing our competence, we are demonstrating our capability, our competencies, and our context. All right, and someone might be very skilled doing diagnostics sonography with a specific population group because they work with those kinds of cases all the time. That's the context. All right, and you know, your scope of practice is multiple, but sometimes you narrow your scope because that's the volume of patients problems that you work on. Capability are those sorts of things that we need. We need physical capability, intellectual capability, emotional capability to do our work. It's the raw material, it's the ingredients. Competencies, those knowledge, skills, and abilities. So capability is about us. Competencies are what we do, and context is where we do it. And those 3 things have to be in balance for us to be able to perform competently. Next slide. So this is a little bit, I mean, this is a truth. Whether all of us experience that in our clinical lives depends on where we work and who we work with, and when we had our original education. All right, but for people in practice a long period of time, they would have seen more evolution in practice. And sometimes the evolution is in the equipment, sometimes the evolution is in who's around our teams, sometimes the difference is in the acuity and problems of the patient. We don't have to talk about the pandemic to know that lots of things changed in that 28-month period. So with the evolution of practice and practice settings and equipment, it's not a surprise that we see an evolution of practice standards over time. that doesn't make it easy. It just makes it true that all of these things are changing. Ours in healthcare and health education, it's not a static environment. Next slide. So now we're going to just talk a little bit about risks and supports to competence. And, regrettably, Julie didn't give me, 3 hours or 3 days to talk about it. Let's go to the next slide because this is a topic I could talk about for a really long time. I've done research, and the research and my practice is about what are the risks to competence and what are the supports to competence. And as Chrissy noted, my administrative leadership work started with physical therapists, and those that were internationally educated coming into Canada, those that were trying to do the exam, and those that weren't successful in the exam. We did a lot of work trying to understand who was struggling and what those problems were and how could we help people be successful. And then when I went to the University of Toronto, I'm the education lead. The immediate past, I finished that in January. We have 70 plus residency education programs. So orthopedic surgery, neurosurgery, so all the surgeries, all the medicine specialties. We have 3,000 trainees in all those programs. And that's a lot of people doing good work, but also some people get into trouble. And again, we've looked at multiple professionals and what are the risks. And our research tells us that this list of 12 risks is pretty stable across many professions. We haven't specifically analyzed yours, and so your college or your professional groups across the country may only have 5 of these or 3 of these, or might have 10 of these. Not you as an individual, but as a population, what sorts of things people get into trouble with. Transitions, when you're coming in and out of practice, often for good reasons, but you get rusty, and that's what that means. All right, and number 10, adequacy of training. As things change, did what you were trained in and around, whether that was 3 years ago, 15 years ago, 35 years ago, does that still apply? Sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. Number 6 is really important. Practice features, who's around you, either where at the location that you work at or virtually, to help you sort out if you have problems and you need to sort things out. And we know that if your context doesn't have good resources, be that physical equipment, other colleagues, etc., it's hard to do a good job because we need infrastructure and we need colleagues. Let's go to the next slide. So,
sorry, Susan, I've got a little question. What is IMG?
Okay, if we could go back, Julie, I'm just going to test you out here and make you go backwards. Thank you. My apologies. International graduates. In the case of our research, a large percentage of the studies are related to physicians, so it's international medical graduates. And let me just comment on that. This is an international phenomenon. We know that people who are international graduates have trouble in their new location of practice. Let me tell you that that holds for Canadians who go to Ireland, South Africa, South America, Asia, Australia. as well as holding for those people who come here. So it's not a phenomenon of unique to coming to North America, coming to Canada. It's not a foreign trained issue. It's a context issue. And it was, I think it's both surprising and I would say in some ways reassuring that that we see Canadians who go to Ireland get into trouble. Not that we want to see anybody get into trouble, but what we learn is that it's about those teamwork things. It's about the equipment. It's about knowing the local rules and expectations that get people into trouble. And maybe I just want to unbundle because I'm here back anyways. Thanks, Julie. As it relates to age, it's with age, and here we're talking about our research would say over 70. It is where we start to see differences in performance. Remember, of course, a lot of our data is coming out of physicians, but again, groups would need to study to see if it applies to them. But you know, over 70, it's about whether the hearing is still good, the eyes are still good, the hand-eye-hand coordination is still good. All of these risks are about the population, right? The thousands of people. What is the incidence of these problems? All right. And gender, the risk factor in gender is maleness. Assigned male at birth is a risk. Whether the health profession, our research so far would say that whether the health profession is male dominated by numbers or female dominated by numbers, men proportionally overrepresented in complaints and discipline. You know, so far we don't have a good sociological understanding of that because we know it's not an intelligence issue. The question is whether it's a sociologic inclination to follow the rules or ask for help. Again, these are just ideas we are starting to explore. Let's go on to support. Like I said, I could talk about this one all day. So what are the things that support your competence? All right, that help you stay competent. And this is a list that we have culled from both our practice and our research. And continuing education is, you know, the most frequently reported and recorded and researched. There's lots of other things on this list that really do support your competence. And, you know, one of the things we're trying to do research on is the relative power of these different factors. Now, some of these are the inverse of the risks. If we used a healthy heart model, for example, my own risks for heart disease are related to my, you know, my mother's history and my mother's family history of heart disease. All right, I am not male, and so I don't have any of those risks related to maleness in heart disease. I don't smoke, but I also don't have the most perfect diet. I do exercise. So the question is, you know, what are my risks? All right, and what are my supportive factors? Just because I have risks, it's not a guarantee I'm going to have a heart attack or a stroke. And just because I exercise isn't a guarantee get out of jail card that says I'm never going to have a heart attack. So these aren't you know, it's about population and managing your risk and mitigating your risk. Next slide. All right, so epidemiology, funnily enough, you know, our work is our work in this is over a decade old. When I started talking about the epidemiology of competence and what are the risks and supports, I had to explain epidemiology in a way that I don't have to anymore. It was, at least for me, a small gift with the pandemic that people understand the word, they can pronounce it, and they know what it means. And it's like, what are the risk factors that we need to manage, and what are the supports? But no support is a guarantee. No risk is an absolute. So we're looking at patterns, and we're trying to educate people about this and understand it. Next slide. Because this is a self-regulated profession, all right? And you can only monitor and self-regulate yourself if you know, if you have information and agency to do that. And this allows, in my view, and I've worked with a variety of employers and regulators, it helps regulators to prioritize those programs and systems for people who are most at risk, and to develop programs around things that are supportive, and ideally also help individuals understand their risks, monitor them, mitigate them. And I want to say, turn the volume down on the risks to the extent that you can. I can't change my family, all right, but I can change my diet, all right? So not everything is, adjustable on the risk side, but I can, moderate and mitigate through supports. Next slide. All righty. So different points of view on competence. Let's look at that. So who's responsible for continuing competence? Next slide. The short answer is everybody. All right, so let's go through this. I'm looking, there's 110 of you online. All of you that are registrants, registered members of your college, you're in the middle. Only you know what you do every day, and it's on you to do a good job. End of sentence. All right, and so if you break your arm, all right, that's a capability issue. All right, you may not have the physical ability to do your job. That's temporary. All right, but you can't do your job. All right, if but also capability wise, if you are emotionally unwell, it's up to you to decide whether you can do a competent performance of your job. All right, that's our job as health professionals, is to make sure that I'm up to the task and doing the job every day, doing it competently, not only because I'm getting paid to do that, but because I'm registered with the college, and that's their expectations, and that's the public's expectations of us. All right, but you are your own competence board. Only you know your capability, you know your competencies, and if there's a new piece of equipment and you don't know how to use it, presumably you need to go to the in-service, you need to read the materials, you have a difficult case, a difficult reaction of a patient to an intervention that you're doing, you're going to need to figure out why that happened, and was it preventable, so that next time you can follow up. But individually, you are accountable, period. All right. Additionally, at the bottom, the regulatory authorities, your Nova Scotia College, that, this is your second annual meeting, they are an organization that have a legal authority and requirement to register people who are educationally qualified and to monitor through you know, they have a variety of choices, and you know, continuing professional development is one. And I understand come this fall, your 24 months first cycle is up, and you know, there's going to be some ticket counting between now and then that you will need to do to make sure that you're you know, meeting your obligation. It's not voluntary, all right? It's an obligation. And of course, you don't have to be a member of the college. You might need to be a member of the college to do your work. I can't help you with that. That's just like a rule that the government set. And you know, self-regulation, there's a lot of health professions as groups who would love to be regulated, because really it provides a level of autonomy. You know, whether you individually like it, you know, there's lots of things not to like about being regulated, because it feels a bit bridling to be told what to do. But the regulatory authority has a legal obligation to register you, monitor your performance. If you're, you know, if it comes to their attention through complaints or whatever, that you're not meeting the bar, they have a requirement to, you know, become engaged with you and sort that out. Accountability, your employer absolutely has an accountability, all right? Patients come in the door, they have an expectation of quality care, and so we're accountable to supervisors, all right? National and professional associations have a big role in competence, because they have ideas and ambitions for health professions, and are often trying to make sure that the public and their members have the best chance at success. Kind of the difference between the national associations or provincial associations and the regulatory authority is, you know, one is your driver's license, that's your regulatory authority. The Motor League, which is voluntary and kind of advocating for us, is, you know, CAA. It's the association that supports those that pay a voluntary fee. Our educational programs, of course, are very interested in making sure that we are educated to the right standard and look to, you know, what does the environment need from us as health professionals. So there isn't any single group, and when you become regulated, it could be that the bottom one, the regulatory authority, becomes new to you. But you know, this is an old slide. We've been you know, using different colored shaped versions of this slide in our work on competence for 2 decades now. So this isn't a new idea, and this isn't a new slide. But I think you know, for a relatively new population such as yours and your new college, there's always, well, I'm responsible for this, and really, it's so shared. Let's go to the next slide. Ways of monitoring. All right, continuing professional development. You are the self in the middle of self-regulation, all right? And like I said, it can be a bit bridling. You know, no one asked me if I wanted to be self-regulated. I'm sure they didn't, but you know, it happened. And again, you have agency. You may not feel you have a lot of agency if you want to do your job in the same place in the same way, because the context changed, the rules changed, all right? And but around continuing professional development, you really do need to be thinking about, okay, this is where I get to, you know, figure out what's important for me for continuing professional development. All right, let's go to the next slide. Here we go. These are, you know, when we did a detailed review of the literature, we put together, you know, why people felt continuing professional development was important. Sometimes it was developing leadership skills. Sometimes they were interested in translating evidence into practice. So going from theory to practice. Others wanted to move the knowledge base, all right? Lots of people wanted individual and professional advancement. Sometimes you take a course to move along and up the ladder. Sometimes it's because you want an additional skill. Personal satisfaction is another reason that lots of people choose. Improve client outcomes is an absolute outcome of continuing professional development that some noted. Lots of people talked about enhancing their knowledge, and some people talked about meeting their continuing competence requirements. If we go to the next slide, I think it's over to you, Joanne, to take us through a couple of polls.
Okie doke. Here's the first one.
Which of these factors are your reasons for being interested in continuing professional development? And even if you're not really interested, pick whichever ones you would be most interested in. Up to 3.
Okay, I'm going to close the vote in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. I'll launch the next one. There you go.
A bit longer, Joanne, or are we?
Yeah. We're at 70%. 70. I'll close it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. I'll share the first question results. There you go.
All righty. So let's look at these. So improve patient outcomes. So that is terrific and good to see. Number 2 is continuing competence. Number 3 is enhance, and then, closely knowledge base and professional advancement. All righty. I'm just gonna take a picture of that. Got it. And the next one.
Okay. There you go.
All righty. I want to say a relative tie on cost, topic, time, day of the week, requirements to be done, and location. All righty. All righty. So people chose up to 3, and cost and topic, was chosen by, the largest majority of people who answered. Great, 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 great. Very helpful. Let's go to the next slide. So continuing professional development, continuing professional development works when, or works the best when you have a sense of what you both want and what you need. All right. And for continuing professional development, to really focus on the sorts of high-level goals that you wanted, continuing competence, advancement of knowledge, you need to consider that the research tells us that most often we look to professional development in topics that we already know well and in areas we want to get better at, as opposed to areas we need to get better at. So, you know, I'm very interested in education. The chances that I will go to an education workshop as opposed to a reflection workshop or a relaxation workshop, both of which are things I likely need more of, as opposed to education, which I already have a lot of, all right, are things that we all need to take into account. Things we like to do are the things we like to do and are the things we like to do more of. And so you need to make sure that your continuing professional development is the right combination of both wants and needs. Wants and needs. And I think we're pretty good at what we want to do. We need to think about, so as it relates to our needs, sorting out, you know, where are there gaps in our knowledge? Where do we struggle? Where do we need to get better? All right, because if we think of competence as a waterline, if we're really good at something, we can get better. All right, but the things that are just above our waterline of competence might be things that we need more of. So please think about that as you're choosing your continuing professional development. All right, and so be tactical not only on your wants, but purposeful to make some of your choices or consider some of your choices in your areas of need. Next slide. And this slide relates to our early slide. And if you remember or not, I do, that those that are 20 plus years practicing that are on the call said that they'd seen more change in their career than those that were newer to their profession. And that makes a lot of sense. It also reminds us that when we're doing continuing professional development, sometimes to just stay at that waterline, all right, means we have to do you know, quite a bit of work because maybe the environment's changed a lot. Again, it could be equipment, could be team, could be the EMR, could be our formularies. There's lots of things in healthcare and our healthcare systems, no less our specific health professions that change over time. And so it feels like the waterline is getting higher. And I don't think that that's untrue. The expectations of us as health professionals has increased with each decade. And I would say that the rate of change is getting faster, not slower. And that can account for some of our feeling that, gee, man, they're expecting more of us. Yeah, unfortunately, that is true. And that is hard. And that takes effort. Next slide. All right. You are the experts in your field. Again, remember in the accountability model, you're in the middle. So you're going to need to do some thinking on continuing professional development and what it's going to take to stay competent, all right, with the pace of change of people and equipment and rules, all right? And, you know, you are an expert in your field, and it's important for you to take pride in that and continue to do the excellent job that you've been doing, and understand that if it feels like it takes more effort to stay at the waterline, it's probably because the waterline has increased over time. Next slide. All righty, next slide. So features that support your continuing competence. All right, think about wants, not needs. All right. You know, think about why you're doing the continuing professional development. What are the reasons, both personal and professional? What are those outcomes? All right. I think your reasons for choosing location and cost and time, those are real and those are important, and I don't want to diminish those at all. Sometimes though, you need to think about being planful over your 2-year period, so that, because it might take more attention, let's say in the next cycle, to make sure that you get the right balance of things, both that you want and also those that you need. Often we need to, when we're learning new skills, we need to touch them multiple times. So, you know, not to be, it's rarely a one and done thing. Often it takes multiple times and multiple ways to get proficient at new things. And that's sometimes why we, you know, put on the comfortable sweater as opposed to the new thing, because, you know, it feels more comfortable, but that's where separating out wants and needs. Remember that, you know, you as a self-regulated professional, you have agency, all right? And so you need to make sure that you do your best to use the time available to do those things that are most meaningful to you, and keep you competent and keep you confident in the work that you do. Next slide. Alrighty, so we've come away. We're gonna have some time here for questions. So we looked at competence, and what does competence look like, right? It's that 3-legged stool. It's your capability, all right, physical, emotional skills as well. All right, risks and supports. What are the risks and what are the supports? All right. And I just maybe just want to do an aside around one of the most important secondary benefits of continuing professional development is the social aspects. And I think we've lost some of that in our move to online and our opportunity to collaborate. It takes more effort depending on where we work to get the support that we need. But continuing professional development activities where you can connect with people are really they hit 2 buttons on the supports category, both the knowledge and skill category, but also the networking social, because often those are the people we're going to turn to when we need some help. And you know, being able to turn to them and ask for help is really important to us being at the middle of our own competence. We talked about different points of view on competence. All right, professional association, regulator, educator, employer are on the outside and you're on the inside. All right, and there's lots of ways to monitor continuing competence, and that is the obligation of the college. And as you know, continuing professional development is, you know, where your college has, you know, set some rules out. I know that that's going to be part of your conversation in the next part of your meetings. Next slide. I think we have time for some questions now, and so I'll turn it over to those that are organizing the questions.
Okay, so does the lack of employer funding / reimbursement of education costs adversely affecting and limiting professional development and pursuit of additional competencies?
So the short answer is yes. You know, but it is neither necessary or required for employers to support financially through time off or direct reimbursement. All right, so I mean, employers have an obligation to support you at, to do good work in their location. They don't have an obligation to give you paid time off to do that, or to pay you, reimburse you. And, depending on the health profession and the employer, they do or they don't. It isn't, from a legal perspective, if employers don't, that's not a reason or excuse to not maintain your own competence and or meet the regulatory requirements. So I think if the health authority buys a new piece of equipment, I would say, this is me, that they have an obligation to teach you how to use that piece of equipment. I don't know your credit counting system for continuing professional development, so I don't know if there's a way that you can get credit for that education in your, credit counting system for the college. Don't know the answer to that. You can ask that later on. But if there's other wants or needs that are related to the college content, that isn't specifically an employer requirement. Is it helpful? 100%. Is it a requirement? And I've seen that wax and wane over time. I would say that fiscal reality is tight, but also shortage of staff is real. And so we're seeing more sort of soft financial support in lots of systems to keep staff happy and staying in systems. So maybe the future is a bit brighter than it might have been over the last decade. Hope that answers your question.
So let me just read this one. Opportunities for CPD are often done during the work day. This limits the chance of staff to attend. So how can that be addressed if it is all on the employee to make it happen?
Yeah, so interesting choice of words. Thanks so much for that question. I think what it's saying is that as regulated health professionals, we need to think of continuing professional development as part of our work, as opposed to our work as an employee. And to be a regulated health professional sometimes takes an investment in time outside of our paid work to meet our license requirements. And that's true of driver's license. No one said you had to drive a car, but if you want to drive a car, you need to get trained up on these things to pass the written test and these things to pass the road test. And at different ages in different provinces, you have to continue, you have to also show other things. So yeah, it is tough and it is real. And we need to, as health professionals, start to, when you become a regulated health professional, it's saying you need to do this and you need to figure out, how to make that part of your work, which is different than, it may not be part of your paid work. And that isn't always feel right or feel fair. It doesn't make it any less true though.
Okay, I have another question. Seems like the college expects more of us every year. Why is that?
Well, thanks for that question. Like, I can't comment on, if there's different expectations from sort of year zero to now, because this is their second annual meeting. But this relates to, I would say, evolving expectations of the public of health professional groups, period. And, if you've been in practice 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, do our systems expect more of us as health professionals? I think the answer is yes. Why? I think it relates to you used to be, registered once as whatever was your health professional, and it was like, a certification for life. What we know is that because the systems change so quickly, the rules change and evolve over 5 or 10 year periods, the colleges have a legal mandate to make sure that people are staying up to date. And without requirements, it's really, we're human. It's like so not on the top 20 list of 20 things we would do sort of voluntarily. And so that's why what we've learned in the regulation world is regulators have made these things more mandatory. Some colleges have mandatory re-examination every 5 or 10 years. Others have continuing professional development. I think you want to talk to your other health professional colleagues or look around at the different colleges, and they all have a bit different systems. Some are more appealing. Education, continuing professional development is more appealing to some, and redoing an examination or assessment every 5 or 10 years is more appealing to some. College leadership often are, navigating, what the range of choices they have to offer, as well as what they think is going to work best for their registrant populations. And truthfully, some of it comes down to cost. What's cost affordable both for people to do and the regulator to supervise, because all of the monitoring takes time and staff. And in the self-regulatory model, it's a taxation model. If the regulator has very complicated systems and not that many registrants, then the per person cost is high. So why? Knowledge has expanded, and we know that registrants are not sort of volunteering to spend time learning some of the things that are necessary that the college needs to know that they know. Thanks, Joanne.
Okay, I've got a few questions. So nursing unions have continuing education stipends built into their collective agreements. Maybe petitioning our unions would be a good place to start.
Absolutely. I would say, pull on every lever. Again, this is where, as a parallel health professional, knowing how other groups find ways in the outside circle to support the inside, that is you, and your continuing competence. I think that's a really appropriate lever to investigate, because there is no doubt that if you can get some stipend support and or paid time to do some of the things, like employer paid time to do some of the things that you need that will benefit both them, their patients, and meet your continuing professional requirements for the regulator, then it's tick, tick, tick. Again, I say whenever you can double do or triple do, that's really like a good solution.
Okay, why do some healthcare professions appear to be given preferential treatment in access to public/employer funds to pursue or enhance competencies as opposed to others? Is this an area where our college or professional groups are failing us as members?
I can't, so let me tell you, so thanks for that question, because it's a great question. The last question on unions is one strategy. The issue is who's got positional power in these situations, and how, you know, how is what you're wanting in this sentence or this question aligned with their purpose. The regulator is absolutely, I want to say forbidden, is not allowed to advocate for their registrants. They represent the government and the public. And when you say, you know, that college, they're not like advocating for me, and I go, then they're doing their job. Their job, absolutely. If they got into trouble, if they appeared to the government, if the college appeared to the government to be swayed by the view of their registrants and not fulfilling their public protection mandate around safety of the public and the regulations, they'd be in big trouble. Your council would be in trouble, your staff would be in trouble, and you need only look to the west coast of BC, where a couple of colleges, and also in Ontario, where a couple of colleges were, I want to say, decertified. They lost their individual authority while they got things reorganized. So it is not the job of the regulator to advocate for you. It is the job of unions to advocate for you and your professional association. That is their job. If you look at their mandate, their mission, that's well aligned. I can't comment on the extent to which they made this a priority for to support their members in either of those cases. So regulators are allowed to tax you and to monitor you as you join the regulatory body and to stay registered, what it takes to stay in here. And that's why, you know, it feels like, gee, they're like, you're not a customer, you're a stakeholder. All right. And it doesn't seem fair that you're paying all this money to them and they're not doing what you want. But unfortunately, that's I mean, if that is their reality, and they'd be in trouble if they were doing what you asked a lot of the time.
Okay. Sorry. Are you ready for the next question?
I am.
Can you speak about the value of informal learning, especially online, as we become more globally connected? How can stakeholders support the recognition, implementation, and provide ideas about recording these activities?
Okay, so this is an area, again, I wasn't asked to look at or critique your credit system for continuing professional development. So I'm speaking theoretically as opposed to having a fulsome understanding of what's included in your 24-month collection. Informal learning is really important. As in online learning, one of the important things related to learning is, well, let's go through a few of the things. How closely it relates to both the wants and needs of what you need to be studying. That's an important piece of quote unquote informal learning. And so being able to articulate the extent to which it meets your you know, your gaps or your interests is really important. Informal learning should still allow for deep learning, and ways that can happen in informal online is with quizzes like this, like the polling that we did, that, you know, you get to kind of problem solve and then link that problem solving to content. That allows for deeper learning than if I'm just talking to you for the 45 or 50 minutes. All right, so what's the design of the quote unquote informal learning? Is there quizzing? Is there interactivity? So that it's not like you're listening to the radio, which, I mean, you may not even hear the songs, or you watch a TV show and someone said like, what happened? And you go, I don't know, like I wasn't really paying 100% attention. So the interactivity that allows engagement and learning is really important. And the other part that's really very important in any learning situation is the ability to which we can develop social connection. And with online learning, often you do breakout groups, or you know, there's a chat which you know, people can, you know, put comments in again, or you know, you might have a conversation with your colleague or in a phone call, or next time you see them around something else. So those are the elements: wants and needs. So what are the objectives, how it's designed interactively from an interactivity perspective, and is there an opportunity for social engagement, network follow-up about, you know, how that works and how that actually plays out in your actual work that you do in practice. So those are things that are important. And you know, I think the extent to which we could record those sorts of things, those don't necessarily take money, depending on how they're designed, or they're much more flexible from an impact to personal and family time.
Okay, I think we've only got time for one more question, and then we can answer the other questions personally or later. I don't know how you want to address that, but the last question is, how do I choose my CPD?
So, you know, I think you want to balance wants and needs. I think, you know, you should, you know, if you look at what you've done between, you know, over the last, since, you know, where are we? Let's say we're 18, 19 months in on a 24-month cycle. I'd have to do the arithmetic. You know, if you've mostly focused on wants, then let's say you've only focused on wants, things that you wanted to learn. You know, I think the most important thing between now and October is getting done, period. You have to get those done. All right. But in your next cycle, figure out what's the right balance. 1/4 of what I want to do, 1 3/4 of what I need to do, or is it 50-50? Again, try to increase the amount of effort that you spend in CPD that is focused on what you need to do, not only what you want to do. So I would ask, as an educator, I would ask you to think about that. Secondly, you know, at least some of your education needs to be have a high degree of interactivity with people that can, you know, again, we need strong collegial support. Maybe we don't need it today, this month, but if you need them, it's like friends. If you aren't a friend along the way, it's hard to have a friend there when you need them. All right. So you know, we need to invest in collegial relationships and collegial connections, and you know, that's a big. The evidence is really strong on that from a supportive network perspective. You want education that's fun, that you're interested in, that you want to do, that's convenient, that's as cheap as possible, as convenient as possible. Those aren't bad things at all. And interactivity, you know, I think is important. And because I really think, where's the dialogue between the learner? The learner needs to make connections as opposed to be entertained. It is not edutainment. All right, it's about learning, and let's focus on the learning. That's the last question. Julie, I'd be happy to if you send me the questions afterwards, we can find some way to provide the answers.
Okay, I'll do that with any unanswered questions.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We can email them to you, and then you can email us back some responses, and we can have them posted on the website. Thank you so much, Susan, for your talk, and yeah, reminding us that we are at the core of this, and it's definitely a new effort. As you say, I like that better than burden. But there are thousands of opportunities and accessible resources from many organizations like CMRT and Sonography Canada. So yeah, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you so much, and have a good rest of the meeting. I look forward to seeing those questions, and we can find a way to get answers to those individuals or the group.
Perfect. Thank you. See you. So we're going to take a quick little break now. The AGM will start at